Hello, my creative friends, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Prompt. I realized recently that I haven't really done an update on the Writer's Room indie film studio project thing in quite a while, and an email came in that made a couple comments that I wanted to address, and I thought, why don't I do it in the context of maybe the big picture again of what we're trying to do, what I'm trying to build here. So the email that came in said, Jeff, producing a screenplay is surely only half the battle and pointless without distribution. May I ask who you have relationships with for distribution? He says, I say this as I've been in several independent movies, fully budgeted, etc., but at the end of the day, without a distribution deal, they fall on their ass, and it seems more like a vanity project. Help me to understand. Now, this brings up an interesting point about this whole idea that I'm trying to build here. And so I want to answer this question and try to give you a bigger picture, a clearer picture of what it is that we're actually trying to build. So first of all, let me say what I wrote to him. I said, I agree with what you're saying about the possibility of it ending up as a vanity project, which is not what we're building, for the record. But even a vanity project, if it gains attention and drives interest in the writer, can be a valuable step in the longer term strategy. Think of it this way. To attract attention at the highest level of the industry, you need credibility and the skill to deliver. Writers develop the skill through writing spec projects and honing their craft over a long span of time, many, many years in most cases. What's missing is the credibility. Some people attempt to get it through competitions, which in the industry generally knows only offer limited credibility because somebody has to win a competition, so it doesn't necessarily verify the credibility of a project. But the only real way to get that credibility is to have been produced. Right? So, but not only that, to have been produced on a project that attracted attention and created buzz. I'm personally looking to build the mechanism that systematically gives writers who actually develop their skills the means to acquire that credibility. To achieve this, I need two things. A, writers who actually develop the skills, because 99% of writers never do, never will. And B, an output mechanism that can then showcase them. So that's what I'm trying to build here. Writers join fast. They develop those actual skills rather than the theory that you get from books and courses and stuff that is not designed for production. Then with those skills, we write to specific and changing production parameters. And then we produce those projects. So initially we test and build the new distribution model with the early projects as it grows and becomes the systematic mechanism for the objective. In other words, so I want to break this down. So the first question is, if you don't have distribution relationships, what's the plan there? So my goal is to build a new distribution model. Think Netflix. But think of it as an educational entertainment platform. So it's not just you're going on Netflix and watching whatever the latest movie is. You're going watching what the latest movie is, but you're also seeing all the behind the scenes content and what have you that this show will eventually become, but also the breadth of more of what it can be as we're actually in production making those projects, right? So if you think of that that is the distribution model. Now, that's not the only model, particularly not before we've built it. Initially, we have some new ideas, some new theories I've talked about earlier on this show, but there are some new distribution ideas that I have that need to be tested. And so we're going to test those new distribution avenue possible models. And then depending on how that goes, depending on the interest level, depending on what we get, there are all sorts of ancillary distribution possibilities for a project. It's true that a lot of people go into a project, particularly with bigger budgets, fully budgeted, as this writer said. The fully budgeted projects are often over budgeted. So when they go get time for getting a distribution deal, they can't make the numbers work. There's not enough interest or sufficient viability for that project in the marketplace. So there's two things for writers. There's the viability of your project, your screenplay, for a producer considering your screenplay. But then the thing that you guys don't necessarily think about, it's the producer's job to think about, is the viability of that film in the marketplace and how can we go about and sell it. Not just selling it, but selling it to make our money back, selling it to maximize the value of the product, the movie itself. So when we're evaluating a script, when we're looking at a project, we have to take all those considerations in mind. And so that's part of what determining whether a project is viable or not is all about. All these kind of metrics and considerations that aren't creative in that sense. They really are if you infuse those needs and those metrics into the creative process, which is what I'm all about, which is what FAST is all about. But these are ultimately these are considerations that writers tend not to think about. And so what my goal is to start small, start with nothing, because initially my objective here is to prove to anyone and everyone watching, all the naysayers, all the haters watching at this particular moment in time, to prove that we can literally make a movie with nothing. And we can make money on that movie. We can get distribution for that. Not necessarily through traditional channels, possibly streaming only initially, but enough to generate enough in return that we can then use those proceeds to build and expand further. I'm basically, my goal here is to practice what I preach. My goal here is to show you how to do it by doing it and showing you how I did it, right? So you can emulate that model. But now, just doing the one-off project or two-off project or five-off projects that you might be interested in making is you're going to be working in a vacuum. So if there are tens of writers or filmmakers out there, hundreds of writers or filmmakers out there, thousands of writers or filmmakers out there that just want to make their handful of films, then ultimately everyone's trying to do this in a big vacuum. So what I want to do is create a distribution model where we're all sort of coming in doing it through this model. We're ensuring, first and foremost, that the writers have the skills to be able to feed that, to be able to take their unique ideas and their unique creativity and their unique stories and whatever you're passionate about, what you're passionate about, and turn that into something that is viable for a producer or a production company. That skill set is almost non-existent in the screenwriting world, in my experience. Fewer than 1%. Fewer than 15% for sure, but fewer than 1% specifically, right? Or to a truly advanced level. So when I built Fast Screenplay, it was not to teach people screenwriting. It was not to make money off of you guys. I've never made a cent out of the damn thing. The point of it was to develop to help writers develop not only the skill to be able to write this, but to have infused within that skill set the intuitive understanding and ability to be able to write material that's aligned with your target. So in other words, and again, I'm going to use the horror film idea because that seems to be the easiest one for people to wrap their brains around. I'm not interested in making horror films. So you write a horror film, I'm not going to go out and produce it. But if you let's imagine that what I wanted to do was write a horror film and you had an idea for a love story between two people, whatever. Alignment is a way to figure out how to tap into what you're trying to say, your passion, your messages, your enthusiasm, to take that and infuse it with the needs of your potential business partner. You're the producer, right? If you can infuse them so that you create a story that's what you want to tell within their needs. So if I was making a horror film, how could you tell a story you're passionate about in the horror film genre? Right? So I can think of many ways to tell horror film stories that convey the messages and the themes and the ideas that I'm interested in promoting to the world. So it's just a matter of aligning your creativity with their business needs and injecting that into the process. So when I built Fast, what Fast is about is infusing that reality, the production requirements, the needs of the producer into your creative process. Everyone who teaches screenwriting teaches modular. Effectively what they do is they watch famous and successful films. They go and they analyze those films. What happened where? What's the dynamic behind what happened where? How did the story unfold that led to this successful feeling in us, the audience? They analyze those films, they pull them down, they look at all the different films that succeeded. They try to figure out what the common elements are, and then they create a formula out of, if you put this here and you put that there and you put that there, it's going to have this effect on the audience. And my argument, my thesis here is that if you write to formula, particularly the very well trodden, very well established formulas, if you write to that formula, I can pick it. I can pinpoint it. You send me something by page 10, I know where you're going if you've written to formula. And my argument is that the audience can too. The audience doesn't necessarily know what they're seeing, but they can feel it. Like, this is too predictable. Yeah, this is probably going to happen. They don't know the words for it. They don't know inciting incident or plot twist or these kinds of things. They certainly can feel it. They certainly feel like they're not watching something new, and there becomes a bit of burnout with it. So we always have to introduce newer and crazier and more unexpected twists and turns and machinations to make the formula continue to work. So what my approach is taking people through the process. If you want to use this formula because it's right for your story, here's how to use it. If you want to use this other story theory or story approach, here's how to apply it. It's about, we all start with an idea. We all have to turn that idea into a story. We all have to get that story onto the page. So if we know those things, these are the things we all have to do, regardless of whether you're writing a formulaic story or an avant-garde art film, right? Regardless, you still have to go through this process. So what I've built is a process that guides you through the experience of it to infuse that producer's perspective and insight into your process, right? So the point that I'm getting at is that whether you ever write for me or whether you ever write something that we go on to produce at the zero budget or medium budget or big budget at any point for our distribution model in the future is separate and detached from the fact that you need to understand this process and infuse this creative perspective into your approach in order to align with and connect with the producer who's tasked with turning that into a film, right? You need those skills. You need that skill set. So because you need that skill set, because I couldn't find that skill set anywhere, because we had tens of thousands of projects submitted and we couldn't find material that demonstrated these skill sets. So we can't go back to these writers and say, hey, we need to fix it like this, because they didn't demonstrate the skill set. They don't have that skill set. So we need to first give them that skill set. The most important thing is going through this process, learning, developing these skills, not just in theory, not just lip service, not just saying, oh, okay, I understand, I get it. Yes, thank you, cool. I got one now. And I get that all the time. I get people all the time saying, I've been watching your daily prompt, or I've been doing what, and it's like, you know what? I read back my screenplay and it's totally aligned. It's perfect. And it's like, that's not how you know something is aligned. You know something is aligned by testing it, by putting it out into the marketplace and getting buy-in. You know that your project is aligned when a producer says yes to your project. So how do you get to that point? You need to infuse that creative perspective into your work. So coming back to it, so what's the plan? The plan originally, always from the beginning, has been, let's develop writers who have this skill set. How do we do that? This is what I spent the past 10 years on, building this system, building this process, building the mechanism by which anyone from anywhere goes from nothing to literally having this skill set. And by the way, it's not easy. Sorry, it takes time. People quit because it's not easy. If you're going to quit, you're never going to develop that skill set. So, okay, quit, fine. At the end of the day, that doesn't help me, though. What we need to do is give people the incentive to push, even when it gets challenging. So how can I give them that incentive? Well, why don't we start making the films that people who develop these skills actually have? So the reason this isn't vanity project is because a vanity project would be, hey, pay me some money, go do my little steps here, and then at the end we'll make your little film. Whatever it is, however crappy it might be. And at the end of the day, that's not what we're doing here. That's not what we're saying here. That's not what this is about. This is about, if you cannot demonstrate that you have these skills at the end, you're not ready for the writer's room. It's for people who can demonstrate the skills. It's for people who have reached that level, who have demonstrated that they've done what it takes to at least learn the process and then be able to demonstrate that process to join us in the group where we're actually going to write multiple projects. We're not going to necessarily produce all these projects. We're only going to produce the projects that are viable. We're only going to produce the projects that are effective and compelling and are going to showcase the writer in the best possible way. And the reason for that is because if we're showcasing work that is subpar, if we're showcasing work that doesn't have anything special about it, or that's a copycat storytelling, or that doesn't sort of satisfy the audience experience dynamic, or doesn't have anything to say, or isn't something unique, if we're showcasing that kind of stuff, we're going to undercut our own credibility. We're going to kill the buzz. And so if we kill the buzz, then it permeates, it affects all the other projects, right? If we only go out and create the stuff that is from writers who are demonstrably capable of doing this, who demonstrably create something that truly is genuinely extraordinary, effective, powerful, marketable, all the rest of it, then we create a project that has buzz. Now, if we create the project that has buzz, we create a little movie, tiny little movie, and people who see it go, that was awesome. You got to see this movie. And people tell people and people tell people. You can spread your marketing dollars much further. You can therefore spread your distribution much further. So on the distribution side of things, I'm trying to build my distribution model for the independent film studio. But at the end of the day, initially, we're still probably going to have to get, and maybe always, we're still going to want to have distribution into other avenues as well. So if we can demonstrate that we're creating something extraordinary, then other places are going to want to distribute that content, right? So if we can build the sort of marketing machinery around this, then we create something that ultimately can spread much further afield as well. Now, this is the basic plan, and this is why it's not a vanity thing, because you can be guaranteed to get into this room, but not guaranteed to have your work made. We're going to make at least one project, and I'm going to be there steering this as well, not controlling the story narrative initially. In the early films, probably so, but as we go along and as this thing builds, the goal is for me to step back entirely and have other story developers, and that's part of what's included for free and all this stuff, is have other story analysts and people building this stuff, because those salaries would get paid from the proceeds of the earlier films. So the whole point is to bootstrap this, to demonstrate, to prove concept, to say this is possible today. We can make movies anywhere in the world today. We can do this anywhere. There is literally unlimited opportunity available to anyone watching right now, to me, to everyone. We have this extraordinary opportunity, and people are not taking advantage of it. And it's incredibly frustrating for me, but it should be frustrating to you as well. And I'm saying, here's what I've laid out to try to build this thing. This is the plan. I built this thing exists, this thing works, the system, the fast screenplay, this thing works. If you go through this process, I'm saying that when you get to the end, you will have those professional skills, you have the experience, you'll have the production perspective infused into your creative process. With those skills that fewer than 1% of writers have. If you have that, then you are ready for actually writing for production. Then we write for production. We make projects. The initial projects might not be great. They might not be extraordinary. I don't know. We're working on them right now as we speak. We're in the beta group at the moment, the beta testing group, and we're looking to make our first film next year. Originally had intended to do it this year. Things get pushed back. This is the nature of working at this budget level. But so that's the plan ultimately. So if you're watching this video in real time, you're watching this video when it's being uploaded. This is something that we're going to be building over the months and years to come. If you're watching this later and it's already built, this was the seed that made that happen, assuming that we built it effectively and that it all worked out. My bottom line point is, fast screenplay is valuable for any writer, anywhere, of any level. whether we build this independent film studio successfully or not. This exists, and this is extraordinary because it develops skills you can't get anywhere else. This is the next level that I want to put my attention and focus on too, and that's where we're at now. So if you're interested in joining any of this, jump on board. If not, totally cool. Just sit back and watch. We're gonna build something quite extraordinary, and my hope is that as we go, we're going to have more and more behind the scenes content, educational content that's going to inspire and help you in whatever sort of your variation of this path is going to be and can be. So hopefully that makes sense. Where are we today? We're getting very close to finalizing our story in the lead up to hopefully going into production in the new year. Depending on weather, depending on time of the month, depending on when it all sort of comes together. I'm not sure what it's going to look like. I have changed the plan, so we're just going to focus on making this first film first. It's going to take writers time to go through this process and actually develop these pro-level skills. For a fast screenplay, the intention from the outset was in Australia, it takes a 3-year university program, costs about $30,000, takes about 3 years. My intention was to take that entire time, condense it into 1 year, drop it down to like $1,000 price tag, and make it experiential, so that writers, when they get to the end, they don't just have a lot of theory running around in their head. They actually have projects that they can go out and produce. And so that's what I built. That's what fast screenplay, what I've been doing for all this time. The problem is that has been this enormous time suck, and for me. And so it has taken my attention away from building this event. Now that exists, now that we're there, it's time to move on into the next phase of it all. So anyway, that's the plan. That's where we're at now. That's what things are looking like here towards the end of 2019. So if you have any questions, pop them in the comments below. As a takeaway, as a daily prompt for you, I want you to take a look and really think about this. Really think about this thing that we're trying to build here. If you don't want to join us personally, let me know why. First of all, I'm always curious to know, like, how is this? If this was around when I was starting out, this would have been the coolest thing. Anyway, if not, tell me why. But the prompt for you is take a look at it, think about it, filter your creative process and approach, and how you've strategically been thinking about you're going to go about doing all this, and how does what I've said here change maybe your strategic approach? How does it change what you intend to do? How does it change what you're thinking about writing? How does it change what you have already written, and how you might position what you've already written? If you have any thoughts about any of this stuff, pop it in the comments below. If you have any questions about any of it at all, please pop it in the comments below. And of course, join our new and improved A-list newsletter, email newsletter. There'll be a link here somewhere, and join us on this little journey, whether you join us in the system or whether you just join us as a viewer and a participant and a quiet supporter from the bleachers. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next week.